Hello and welcome back to Perspectives, bringing you our daily dose of news and views covering the topics we hope are relevant to you. Well, today, the first signs the UK government is already betraying British Sikhs to India. We cover the fractured politics of the Sikh community and are there more false flag Hindutva attacks to smear Sikhs? And of course, our roving reporter James Cousineau talks to us live, just returning from the Calgary referendum. Good morning, James.
Good morning, Angus. I'm coming to you from Golden, British Columbia in the Rocky Mountains on the way back to Vancouver. A beautiful night here.
Indeed. And together, James and I will be bringing you our perspectives on the daily news affecting the Sikh community across the world. Of course, as usual, we'll take a look at some of your great comments, which have been pouring in as always, so thank you very much indeed for those. But let's get on with the show. James, what have you got to start us off with today?
Well, I thought I would just introduce this spot that I'm at. It's quite unique in that the province of British Columbia has actually acknowledged this location with a heritage sign that brings to light the fact that this was the location of one of the very first Sikh temples in British Columbia and one of the first across Canada. This one it's no longer here because it did burn down. They did replace it with one down the hill, but because of the significance of this marker, it's very rare to see this. So I wanted to bring light to it. The original temple here was built in 1902 as Sikhs were coming to Canada to work within the lumber and the forestry industry. There was a mill here that employed quite a few. And what happened is that mill had burnt down, and that was in the around 1910 era. The mill took several years to be rebuilt, and in the meantime, many Sikhs went to the mainland and the coast in order to find work and to support their families. However, when the mill was rebuilt, they did return to this area in very high numbers. They, as I said, they also replaced the Gurdwara with one downtown, and it's a beautiful old building, very small for what we're used to seeing, given such a small town. But again, the province of British Columbia wanted to acknowledge and honor all of the Sikh history here in Golden, British Columbia. So if you're coming through on the highway, take a stop here and read the plaque. It is just, I thought, a great place to be returning back to Vancouver from the Calgary referendum and just bring this point to you. So as I said, coming back from the Calgary referendum, what a beautiful day it was there, Angus. The sun was shining. It was actually quite hot and humid, but let me tell you, the volunteers were just amazing. They kept water flowing for everybody. They had snacks. They made sure there was lots of shady areas for people as they lined up for about 4 or 5 blocks at times just to wait for their opportunity to get in and cast their vote. It was a beautiful day. It was very peaceful. There was one individual, we didn't get footage of it. I was in a different area at the time, but one individual who tried to upset things and disrupt the voting, he was removed by the police and was taken away. There is also another young, I want to say journalist, but he's more of just a online pest, I think. I won't say his name, but he's also just online all the time talking about Sikhs for Justice and the Khalistan referendum. And he showed up, but he kept his distance and kept his mouth shut on that stuff. So that was good. Other than that, it was a great day. Tens of thousands. They estimate actually 55,000 voters. And some people from as far away as Brampton and Toronto, and then from the west as far away as Vancouver, who did not get to place their votes in the first round of the elections there, the referendum there. And they came all this distance just to show support and to get their votes cast. So it was a wonderful day all the way around. Good day there, Angus. It's James here, out in beautiful Calgary, Alberta, Canada. As you can see, I went a little lighter without the tie today. It is very hot and humid. Thousands and thousands of people are lined up for blocks around City Hall here in Calgary to place their votes in this round of the Khalistan referendum. Of course, we realize that there are a lot of places around the world where people wouldn't have the right and the freedom to have their voices heard. And Canada is definitely not one of those places. As you can see, the crowds here are just phenomenal. There are volunteers, of course, walking around, giving out bottles of water and snacks to make sure that everyone is well taken care of. with the referendum happening, of course, there is the right to self-determination, and that is such an important issue, not only with Khalistan, but with other nations around the world and other groups. So it's just amazing to see the turnout here in Calgary. We're at City Hall, and of course, the Modi government was upset about the location and feeling that the government is involved, and they're not. They're just allowing a referendum to be held in a public space. This public space is open to all Calgary citizens and groups. There's no bias, there's no racism, there's no discrimination based on anything. It is a part of the community, it is for the community, and as you can see, the community here has turned out in numbers. So if you're watching on the Savage TV and Perspectives, thank you very much. If you are seeing this elsewhere, please make sure to like, follow, and subscribe to us on YouTube and other social media platforms. Follow along, share with your friends. We want to get the word out about Sikh issues, Sikh history, Sikh culture, and that's the goal of Perspectives on Savage TV, and we hope that you will join us. We also encourage you to add your comments on the Perspectives feed. We always love to hear from viewers, and we may have your comments on the show. Once again, it's James Cousineau with Savage TV here in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. Stay safe, everyone. So as you can see, it was a wonderful day. People from, the US and Canada that came that weren't actually voting, but just to show their support. And I can't tell you how many times today people said, "Is Angus here with you?" And, we've got fans out there, Angus, and they were looking for you. I said, "Sorry, he's over in London still. He couldn't make it."
Fantastic.
You think I have a long drive?
Indeed, yeah. Well, how lovely that people are recognising us and recognising the channel. So thank you to those wonderful people who turned up and asked after us. Of course, it is a pleasure to be reporting on such things. Yeah, James, sounds like you had a really good trip. I just want to make one comment about where you're standing there. How fascinating. And one does tend to forget that the Sikh diaspora started a long time ago, a lot longer than people realise. I mean, for people like myself in the UK, we have a huge Indian and particularly Sikh diaspora here in the UK. A lot of that came from, of course, from the 60s, 70s and most definitely in the 80s after the terrible oppression. But one does tend to forget that Sikhs were leaving the Punjab as far as long ago as the early 1900s, James. So fascinating to see that.
Yeah, absolutely. Just down the highway here, about an hour, is Craiglehatchee. It's the last spike that joins the east and the west with the Canadian Pacific Railway. And the Sikhs were instrumental in having been participants in putting that railway down. So, yeah, they've been instrumental in building a lot of infrastructure and developing Canada. I mean, it's just amazing.
Yeah, and of course, it was only, that's only 50 or so years after the fall of the Sikh Empire, that great empire that they had. But yeah, what a challenge for those guys in the late 19th century to come to a country like Canada and the UK and of course the US, building a new life in really what genuinely was pioneering days. Even the white settlers were pioneering in those days. So yeah, it just shows the mettle of the Sikh community and what they had in them. So well done to them.
Absolutely, it's amazing.
Yeah, and the referendum, James, yeah, brilliant turnout, really pleasing to see it. It's very interesting to hear that there were some dissenters there. I think we can guess from which department, which political department they come from. But again, it just shows them up for what they are. This is a referendum. This is a freedom of speech act. This is democracy in action. This is what it's all about. And if you're turning up to these events to disrupt them, you're making your political affiliation very clear. You do not believe in democracy, James. Very clear.
Exactly. And, and I just can't say how amazingly welcoming everyone was today. The smiles, the excitement. It was just a great event. It went just superbly.
Fantastic. It's so good to hear that. Well done to everybody who turned up to Calgary to vote in that referendum event. And, we look forward to the results. But great, James. Thanks very much indeed for that. A really interesting report. Sounds like you had a great day.
No, it was wonderful, and the long drive was well worth it.
Good, great stuff. Okay, let us move on to less wonderful stories. Here in the UK, British Foreign Secretary David Lammy is out in India. He has been visiting his counterparts in India, and of course, all eyes have been on Mr. Lammy. Is he going to raise many issues related to the Sikh community? And of course, one of the biggest one was Jagtar Singh Johal. Now, it turns out the BBC Scotland specifically, interviewed Mr. Lammy and quizzed him about his discussions with India, and in particular in relation to Jagtar Singh Johal. Did David Lammy raise the issue of Jaggi? Let's see. Here's an interview that the BBC did with the man himself. Here's what he had to say.
It's important that due process happens. It's been very, very slow. It's important that we've had consular access with Jagtar, and for all of those reasons, I've raised it again.
Just finally on that point, do you accept that he is detained arbitrarily?
He has been charged.
But the UN said that he's been detained arbitrarily.
That is for the
Keir
UN.
Starmer said in a letter in 2022 that he was a young man, this is a quote, a young man who's been held arbitrarily.
I'm here as Foreign Secretary today. This is a serious case that I've raised in the past and that I'm raising again.
Wow. Blah, blah, blah. Political speak. What a coward. What an absolute coward, I'm afraid, is the word that springs to my mind. The Labour government were elected on this huge pro-Sikh rhetoric. They were always, yeah, we will do this, we will do that for the Sikh community, because they realised what a powerful voting bloc the Sikh community is here in the UK. And of course, big promises about investigations into Operation Blue Star in 1984. Of course, we will raise Jaggi, we will raise this terrible arbitrary detention. And it is an arbitrary detention of Jaggi, as has been recognised, as raised in this interview, by the UN and indeed by the current Prime Minister himself. And here is David Lammy, our British Foreign Secretary, now suddenly massively backtracking. He cannot even bring himself to say the words arbitrary detention. Why? Because he's now bowing down to India. He realises, free trade agreement. Suddenly, human rights, the whole issue of Jaggi is being swept under the carpet. He is being pinned down by James Landale of the BBC, and he is refusing to say even those simple words because he's afraid of upsetting Narendra Modi. That's what it is. Here it is. This is the British Labour government already backtracking through sheer cowardice. I am appalled, James, at this. I am ashamed of this government. It's very clear to me what's happening. The British establishment has got its claws into David Lammy, has got its claws into Keir Starmer, and they're saying, no, you're not going to upset India, you're not going to upset Narendra Modi. There's no way you're going to raise this Jaggi thing in the full force that it should be raised. This clear breach of human rights, this clear breach of anything that is moral or any rule of law. And here we are, British Foreign Secretary backtracking in the most cowardly fashion, James. I am disgusted.
Yeah, it's amazing how they tend to get the votes and then forget exactly what they promised. And just the rhetoric alone that they utilize to get into office and then just screw everybody once they're there. It's just horrible. And I'd like to think that it's one or two individuals, but it's politicians around the world. It's about the game of getting elected and then forgetting what it is that they're supposed to be doing.
Now, the question is, am I surprised? No, not in the absolute slightest. I actually predicted this. I knew this would happen. It was very clear what was going to happen. It's very easy to make promises during election time. As soon as you're elected and your face is to that grindstone, when you are under pressure to deliver what you've been promising, they always fold, don't they? And here we go. Now, all due credit to Jaggi's brother, who himself is a Labour councillor. He's had to toe a very diplomatic line, but of course, the disappointment. This was another interview the BBC did with Jaggi's brother. Here's what he had to say.
It's good that the Foreign Secretary has raised Jagtar's case, but raising it is not enough. We need a solution, and the solution to this case is not the due process that the Indians have been claiming that has been going on. It's the fact that Jack Tar has been arbitrarily detained and he should be returned back to the UK, to his family, where he belongs.
Yeah, I mean, Gurpreet being very diplomatic, so full marks to him for his diplomatic language. If I was him, I think I would be a little bit more angry. But of course, he's in it for the long haul. He knows this is a difficult battle to fight. But well done to Gurpreet for standing up and raising this very issue. But clearly the disappointment dripping in his voice there. And I think from us independent observers, I think we're all pretty appalled with what's gone on there, James. So unfortunately, we will keep applying the pressure, and I have no doubt that all people from the community will keep applying the pressure. I'm sure the new Labour MP for Dunbartonshire, this is Jaggy's own Member of Parliament, I'm sure he will be pushing his own Foreign Secretary. There's no publicity about that yet. I don't know if he's doing anything behind the scenes. It is worrying, his silence in this. He's certainly not like his predecessor, who was very vocal in support of Jaggy. The current Labour MP, not so supportive. So we'll see. Time will tell. OK, let's move on to my next story. And this is a news article that came out of the Punjab. This was something. This is a presentation a couple of weeks ago that was highlighted in the Siyasat, beg your pardon, news. An article headlined "Current Encirclement of Sikhs by the Delhi Darbar: What Sikhs Need to Do." Now, a couple of weeks ago, and in recent weeks, there have been several of these Shahidi Samagans, these commemorations to many of the martyrs that gave their lives, particularly in the 1980s, in those terrible years of oppression, of extrajudicial killings, when essentially they call them militants, or the Indians call them militants. I don't call them militants. They were freedom fighters, essentially, who were fighting back against this dreadful, oppressive regime of India. Now, on a couple of weeks ago, in the Gurdwara Shahid Singhan in Panjwar village in the Punjab, a Shahidi Samagan was held to commemorate Shahid Lab Singh. Now, I had to look up who Lab Singh was, and just for those of you in our audience who may not be fully aware of who he was a martyr who was martyred in July 1988. But he was also best known as General Lab Singh, and he was a former Punjab police officer who then turned freedom fighter. And he actually commanded a well-known group called the Khalistan Commando Force after its first leader, Manbir Singh Chahru, was arrested in 1986. But he was also an associate of Jarnail Singh Bhindranwale, who did many actions, of course, with Surinder Singh Sodhi and fought against the Indian Army, of course, in that famous Operation Blue Star. He was involved in the assassination of many people, including the Chief of Army Staff Arun Vaidya and the attack on the Director General of the Punjab Police, Julio Francis Ribeiro. And he was a very active character. He also was apparently, or allegedly, behind a huge, in fact, it was India's largest bank robbery, taking almost what amounted to what's equivalent to $12.5 million US in today's money from the Punjab National Bank. And of course, that raid was designed to finance the activities of the Khalistan forces that he was commanding at the time, to buy arms and ammunition. But this event was designed to honour that Shaheed when he was martyred. And the event brought together a large gathering of Sikh devotees and leaders who reflected on the significant contributions of the martyrs and, of course, the broader historical context of those struggles. Now, one of the editors of the Sikh, I can't even say this word, forgive my pronunciation, Siyasat News, Parmjit Singh Ghazi delivered a huge address, a big address, emphasising the vastness of those genocides in 1984, of course, Operation Blue Star, and then what happened after the assassination of Indira Gandhi in November and the terrible genocide that followed them. And he articulated the struggle, what he called the Jujaru struggle, initiated by the Sikh youth following those terrible genocides, and underscoring the resilience and the commitment to the Khalsa Panth. And this is where it starts getting interesting. This is particularly why I wanted to raise this. His remarks extended to the current state of Sikh politics, where he pointed out what he called the disarray, the confusion and the factionalism that plague electoral Sikh politics of the Punjab. And he emphasised the urgent need to establish a panthic mechanism for Seva Sambal, which should operate independently of any electoral bodies, including the SGPC. He emphasised the significance of the collective leadership. He advocated for a framework based on Panch Padani and Gamata, which would ensure inclusive decision-making and align with Sikh traditions. This, he argued, is essential for strengthening the Sikh community and its institutions in the face of contemporary challenges. Now, this is interesting because, and I wanted to raise this one because this highlights something that we've touched upon quite a bit in the past, and this is the fractured politics of the Sikh community, particularly in the Punjab, and to some extent outside in the diaspora. Now, I'm not familiar with the details of many of this, but certainly as an observer from the outside, I have noticed that, of course, there are many organisations who do all speak up for the community, and they are to some degree united. They are united, obviously, in Sikhi. They have much in common, but political alignment, political direction is to some degree fractured, and clearly in the Punjab it is very much that. And I think Parmjeet Singh Ghazi is highlighting the fact that there needs to be, to some extent, there needs to be this separation from politics and from simple decision making in the community. And he refers back to, and I'm no expert in this, but my understanding is that certainly, and it goes back to even the Empire days, where decision-making was a very democratic process. It was a communal, it was a committee process where big decisions relating to any big society decisions that need to be made, whether it was legal, whether it's political, whatever it happened to be, these were made in this panthic tradition. And he is advocating to say, let's remove this messy, dirty politics that is tainting, that is affecting the Punjab at the moment. And of course, along with politics comes a lot of different agenda. It takes it away. It takes decision making away from a lot of these traditional panthic traditions of Sikhi. And I think he is saying, let's create this separation. Let's get back to the old models of decision making. And in that same methodology, you're actually creating your own politics, but in a much more benign, a much more aligned politics to the traditions and beliefs of Sikhi. So yeah, it's a very interesting one, and as I say, I'm not an expert, but to me, even as an observer, it's very clear that politics, once again, we talked about the taint of politics, how it has tainted the purity of Sikhi, that modern politics, and particularly modern politics of India and the Punjab, how it is diluting and tainting this purity of Sikhi and the traditional Sikhi. And again, we come back to Khalistan. And of course, one of the major pillars and foundations of the whole concept of Khalistan is to bring things back more towards this traditional method of running a society that is more pure and more aligned with the traditions of Sikhi. Now, I can't hand back to James, unfortunately, because we've lost James, who is on the road, but we will continue with the show nonetheless. So I'll move on to my final story. And we talk about false flags, we talk about the dangers of Hindutva and their dirty, I've used the word tainted and I'll use it again, the tainted methodology of Hindutva, who are and have been traditionally for decades now doing everything in their power, aided and abetted by Indian intelligence services, to taint and smear the good name of the Sikh community. And we've seen this manifest itself in many ways. And one way, which is very low level, but has turned out to be quite effective and certainly reaches the public domain, and that is a simple act of graffiti. And we've seen this on many occasions where graffiti has appeared on Hindu temples, and this has happened again recently, in recent days. And this was on a mandir that's been blamed on Khalistanis, despite there being no evidence and the growing belief that these are in fact self-afflicted acts. So in Edmonton, in Canada, these claims have been pushed by by Indian nationalists and India-focused politicians, and one particular one known as Chandra Araya are pushing this narrative that Khalistanis are behind this dreadful graffiti being scrawled across Hindu temples. But unfortunately, facts fly in the face of these accusations. The graffiti is using terms unaffiliated to Khalistanis at times using Hindi-style spelling. So basically, what the Khalistani community and Khalistani supporters are saying, we don't use phrases like this. We don't use grammar and terms like this. If they were going to graffiti, they would use completely different phraseology, different language. So again, the graffiti is actually being written clearly by Hindi-speaking people because it uses Hindi-style grammar and terminology and phraseology. And strangely enough, in a lot of these situations, CCTV is nearly always unavailable. And I'll specifically refer to an incident in Australia, and I'll come on to this in a moment in more detail. But there, in a Hindu temple in Australia, last year we reported on this specifically. In fact, I think it was around June time last year. The graffiti appeared on an Australian temple. It was investigated by Australian police. And strangely enough, all the CCTV which surrounded the entire temple suddenly went down that evening for some strange reason. How coincidental. So of course there was no CCTV available. Australian police raised this as being highly suspicious. They investigated it, and in their investigations in that specific incident, they then said it is very likely, in their own words, it is very likely this was actually perpetrated by Hindus in the local community, Hindu activists who are known in the local community to create false flag incidents to smear the local Sikh community. That is the police's own words in their own investigation. So the Hindu activists have been caught effectively at these false flag incidents in Australia. So it is very likely that this incident in Edmonton in Canada is likely again another false flag perpetrated by Hindu activists. And a car branded with Haryana, a state known to house anti-Khalistan sentiment, was linked to one of these incidents. At least one previous accusation of graffiti by Chandra Arya, turned out to be false, so he has a track record on this. And more, including Hindus previously caught doing graffiti near a Khalistan referendum area. And of course we've reported on how many of the Khalistan posters for the referendum have been defaced with graffiti, and Hindus have been caught doing this. And so this latest act occurred in Edmonton a year since Ontario Gurdwara Committee offered a $10,000 reward to help catch the culprits of similar crimes in the province. So it is very clear, once again, these are false flag incidents created by Hindu activists. It is atrocious. These are the depths that Hindu activists will sink to smear the Sikh community. We've seen it at the most outrageous levels. We talk about Air India being the most likely false flag incident perpetrated probably by Indian intelligence agencies, and this goes all the way down to even silly little incidents like graffiti. They are trying anything they can to smear the Sikh community, to turn people against the Sikh community. But it is being called out at every level. They are being caught doing this, and all they're doing is losing credibility. Okay, let's move on. And of course, we move on to our comment section, our popular comment section. So unfortunately, we don't have James to give his perspectives on this, so I will zip through from the London aspect. Oh, James is back on. Welcome back, James. You've joined us again.
It was a good thing that you actually said that you lost me, because on my screen it showed me still there and showed me still recording, so I don't know what happened there.
Okay, great. Well, welcome back to the show. You've missed a couple of stories, but not to worry. We've moved on to the comment section.
I was watching and it was showing me in the corner, so I didn't realize till you said it that you lost me.
Fantastic. Great. Well, it was great to have you with us, James, even though I didn't realise you were with us all along. So, okay, we're just moving on to the comment section, and, well, we've had a couple of interesting comments from somebody who labels themselves Anne. Angus Scott is anti-Sikh, apparently. In the 2024 election exit polls, 29% of Sikhs voted for Congress, 35% voted for the BJP. Sikhs are swing voters and extremely hyper-patriotic, and will stand up to Angus Scott. Whoa! But then Anand goes and betrays himself with the following comment. India and the US have among the best civil rights and human rights records in the world, apparently. And under Trump, US-India relations are likely to sharply improve to an all-time high. Well, I think Anand has betrayed himself very clearly if he believes that India has apparently the best human rights record in the world. Apparently we need to ignore everything that's been going on. We need to ignore the fact that India falls down to 159th out of 183 in the World Free Press Index. We must ignore the dreadful oppression of all the religious minorities. We must ignore the arbitrary detention of people like Jagtar Singh Johal and Amritpal Singh, all the political prisoners, any dissent. We must ignore the closing down of all the newspapers and the media outlets who dare criticise Narendra Modi, James. I think we've been wrong all along, apparently.
Well, apparently, Prime Minister Modi would definitely agree with this gentleman.
Indeed. And I wonder
he might be the only one in the world agreeing, but...
Yes, I think we know where Anand is coming from. But of course, he has an absolute right to make these statements. And am I anti-Sikh? I certainly hope most of our audience know which side I stand in this debate. And of course, there was a lot of comments following that one comment. And Har Singh waded into the debate very robustly, and I won't go into much of the details here, but Har Singh gave as good as he got and made some very sensible comments. Anand did, of course, fight back very robustly, but Har Singh had the final word, signing off with, "Do your research, you will get your answers, bye." And I think I couldn't phrase that any better, James. So, okay.
It's comedy as well as it's entertainment and educational all in one.
Indeed, and we love getting comments like these. So if you are a critic of the show, please do not be afraid of commenting. Please do not be afraid of calling either myself or James out, particularly if you get something wrong or if you disagree with any comments that we make. By all means, make a comment and point out that fact. We are not afraid of being criticised. We welcome being criticised because we're not always right, are we, James?
Exactly.
And in fact, some of our we've had some.
As much as we're here to teach people, we're also here to learn. So and be entertained by some people.
Indeed, and we have had some extremely good comments who have corrected us and have put us right, and we do appreciate those, and we're always happy to correct ourselves when we get it wrong. Okay, Kaushik Patel has made the following statement. "I am from Gujarat, and Sikhs are having a top-notch life here, apparently. How many Gujaratis can boast about this in Punjab? You guys purposely want to object to anything and everything. It's in your blood." Then here we get really contentious. "You were Hindus not very long ago, and now you're going to be Christians. Welcome very much, but please adhere to Jesus' values. Hallelujah." And I have no doubt that most of our Sikh audience might have an objection to the fact of being labelled. Apparently they were Hindus once. And I think that we've touched on that on many occasions. And no, Mr. or Miss Kaushik Patel, unfortunately, Sikhs are not Hindus and never have been Hindus. And I'm sure they will be deeply offended by that. If you do not believe it, there are enough Sikh academics who have pointed this out on every level. Interesting point, though, that Sikhs apparently can move freely in Gujarat unafraid. But Gujaratis feel they can't do the same in the Punjab. I don't know if that is true. I would be surprised at that, bearing in mind many of the comments that we've had. But who knows? That is your perception. Who are we to disagree with it? S.K. Sarkar. Now we get serious. We talk about this terrible tragedy, James, that happened in Canada. This young lady this Indian girl who was knocked down by the racing police car. And this commenter said, it is sad that a bright and promising life was cut short. And what is condemnable is that an insensitive police officer berated her as a low-cost casualty. This police officer made that terrible remark about how cheap her life was worth. And this comment goes on about the macho. The macho charisma of the police and saying it's part of the culture. And then this final part of the comment And one discussion participant, Mr. Scott, opined, myself of course, opined that the officer didn't have any racist overtone revealed. It's presumptuous of myself to make such a comment, as no investigation was done to know whether the individual officer made that expression based on the hidden racism latent in him. Yeah, actually, I would disagree with this. I think it is very, very likely that if there was any element of racism in that comment, it will have been thoroughly investigated. I can assure you that anywhere in the West, in the UK, in Canada, in the US, the culture now has almost swung too far, in the sense that if there was any chance, any hint of a racist undertone, there would have been a mob mentality attitude towards it. He would have been hounded. There would have been investigations. He would have been out of his job. I can absolutely assure you that if there was indeed any racism in that remark, he would have been hauled in front of committees. The investigation, I will guarantee, did look at any racist undertones here, James. I think you'd probably be in agreement with that.
Yeah, and when I covered that story, I did bring the race into it in terms of introducing the young lady as a foreign student, but it was a way to link the officer's comments as racist. It was just bringing up that the young lady was from, yes, she was studying, foreign student. It was, I say here, in America, to link the officer as a racist or anything to that. So I do apologize if anybody took it that way, but yeah, it's important to clarify that as well. So.
Yeah, so thank you for that comment. It was presumptuous of me to make that comment that I did, but I think that presumption is based on pretty much fact that there will have been an investigation for any racist elements to that. So anyway, thank you for that comment. Okay, Amrit Pal, one of our regular commenters, made a very interesting comment here. Politics is never silly. Politics is the father of all sciences. Without politics, you have no nation. Without nation, you are labelled as a Hindu. Interesting. Without politics, you have no future, neither your children, who are forced to flee to save themselves as refugees. No resources, no justice, to be plundered and killed like cattle and poultry. Politics is as vital as air, water and food. And then the final statement here relates to Khalistan and the comment that we had the other day from one of our commenters who said that he treated the whole of India as Khalistan. And Amrit Pal says, anyone who says all India is Khalistan should know in Hindu Tavi, India, he's not recognised as even a Sikh. So yeah, I think this is an interesting comment, James. This the saying that politics is as vital as air, water and food. Now this relates to our discussion that we had where again another commenter had said that politics, buy somebody a whiskey and they'll vote for whichever way that essentially you push them towards. But Amrit Pal here is saying actually politics is an essential part of every part of our lives. We cannot live without politics. I think to some degree that is true.
Absolutely.
It clearly affects, politics affects every part of our lives, whether you like it or not. But in the same token, people are bored stupid of politics. People just do want to get on with their lives. People just want to put food on the table, keep a roof over their heads. Politics is almost one of those essential evils in life that you unfortunately cannot do without politics. Politics does affect everything that we do. So thank you for this comment. It does highlight the fact that whether you want to or not, politics really is a part of all our lives on every level. So yeah, thank you for that observation. Okay, this was a great debate, and we'll finish on this one. Singh SG6VU made a simple comment. This was after our coverage of the Calgary, the lead up to the Calgary referendum. Khalistan, Jindabad, absolutely. Well, one of our regular commenters now, and a very considered and intellectual commenter, Govt. In fact, this is the commenter who treated, I believe this is one, who treated the whole of India as Khalistan. He claims himself as a Punjabi Sikh or an Indian Sikh, so a believer in India. What Khalistan, sir? Who will run it? Have you seen even one Gurdwara run well? Sikhs are not fit to govern. If we can, then first, let's win the Punjab and govern it well, then I will vote for Khalistan. Now, this is actually a very intelligent remark, I have to say. It's contrary to many of our audience, but actually, the real clever part here is he's saying, look, and I think this person does represent a portion of the Sikh community in the Punjab, where he's saying, look, let's prove ourselves. Let's prove that we can run the Punjab well. And if you can do that, you will win our support. And I think this actually is a very valid point. It's a very relevant point. Is that, yeah, many Sikhs, particularly in the Punjab, are very pro-Khalistan. At all costs, doesn't matter, we must have Khalistan. But what this person is saying, hang on, there are those of us in the Punjab, Sikhs, who actually think, yeah, we will support Khalistan, but we've got to know it will work first. We can't just blindly go into this. We must actually prove that as a community, we can run our own community properly. We can run a state, and therefore we can run our own country. So prove it first, and you will then bring on side the other portion of the community, James. So I think this is a very intelligent remark.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's really interesting to see how they're looking at taking it in stages, or, to be able to prove that. So I think that's an interesting take on it, and a very wise one.
Yeah, and of course, unsurprisingly, there was a lot of reaction to that comment. Mohand Hanoa said, the Punjab, of course, the Sikh Empire under Maharaja Ranjit Singh, was the best governed and most powerful country in Asia. After his death, the Hindu Dogras sold the country to the British. They are the most corrupt traitors in the world, yeah. But what he's saying, absolutely right, is that the Sikh Empire proved that Sikhs can run their own country, not just well, but actually it can stand as a beacon of fairness, of justice, of all that is good about Sikhi. And an interesting comment here. Jag Singh said, well, you can vote against it in Calgary. Democracy in action, James. Of course, if you don't want Khalistan, vote against it. That is the point of democracy. If you don't want it, you can vote no.
Yeah, that's right.
And I think, judging by the sea of flags in Calgary, James, as there are at every referendum, I think we know which way it's probably going.
Absolutely, but the beauty of it is that it's a discreet, it's a ballot, it's private, so nobody knows what you're voting, and that's the beauty of the democracy, is having the right to say yes or no, and that's what it's all about.
Of course, democracy in action. If you don't like it, don't vote for it. Simple as that. The next comment from S. Bain said, so you're not a Sikh? Stick to your lane. Only the Sikhs can govern, as can be evidenced from 75 years of Indian history. What a pathetic disappointment India has been. I think that's the key, is that final phrase. What a pathetic disappointment India has been. And one has to say, yeah, since partition, has India been a success? Oh, that's a big topic, a big debate. In fact, we could even do a whole show on that, James. Has India been a success since partition? Discuss. Not enough time to do that now, but I would maybe quickly summarise and say in many aspects it has been a big success. It is a future superpower. In many other aspects it hasn't. I think it's been a deep failure, and I think that failure particularly relates to its diversity of cultures that it has failed to bring together. It has failed to unite these cultures under one flag, and I think increasingly so. I think it is going in the wrong direction. It is moving away from democracy. It is failing its cultural diversity, James. Would you agree with that?
Well, and I think that you have to also look at all the Sikhs around the world that are working, and politicians in other nations. I mean, Jagmeet Singh here in Canada is an amazing politician that gets things done. So, I think there's a balance there, and I just think that we need to keep an open mind on it.
Indeed. And the next comment, and here we start touching upon the caste system, and we did a very interesting podcast last week. I interviewed Colonel Singh, a retired US officer, army officer, and he is an expert. He's written various books on Mahatma Gandhi, but is also an expert on the caste system, the caste hierarchy and the caste system. And we had a fascinating discussion about how the Dalits, the untouchables, how they were essentially conned into becoming slaves of this system, this caste hierarchy. And I would say the dangerous manipulative capabilities of Mahatma Gandhi, who was a big supporter of the caste system, and how many in the Hindu community are supporters of the caste system, even though they may not themselves be upper caste, essentially because even they themselves are slaves of the system, but in turn they have their own slaves. And of course those slaves are the Dalits, the untouchables. And the system has worked for so many thousands of years is because so many people in that system, even though they themselves are slaves of the system, they themselves have slaves. So of course they've got a stake in it. They benefit from a system that they are also losing out on. But of course the biggest losers there are the Dalits, the untouchables. This evil system has this huge community. Tens of millions of Indians live as slaves to a system that they have no stake in, that they have no choice in. And this comment, I pity you. Slavery is in your DNA. You can't see the ongoing genocide of Sikhs by terrorist Indian government. And then something in, I guess, is Punjabi. It signs off in Khalistan, Zindabad. Absolutely. Yes, slavery is in your DNA. This is the powerful point here in this comment. That many in India are slaves without them even realising it. They are slaves of a caste system that actually, according to the constitution, should not exist. But it does exist. And I think people are so inured, people are so trapped in this slave system, and you must watch this podcast to understand a lot of what I'm talking about, is that many in India, many Indians suffer from what I call Stockholm Syndrome. And Stockholm Syndrome is a phenomenon that psychologists have discovered after, it happened after, in Sweden, a lady was abducted, was kept a prisoner by some evil killer. And she fell in love with her captor. And they called it Stockholm Syndrome because this captive, it happened in Stockholm in Sweden. She fell in love with her captor. She couldn't believe that her captor was evil because he had so psychologically manipulated and controlled her that she fell in love with her captor. And this is what has happened in India, is that the vast majority of Indians have fallen in love with those above them. They've fallen in love with this system that has held them captive. This Stockholm Syndrome has captured them. They cannot see the trap that they are in. They cannot see that they are slaves to this system that is keeping them as captives, as holding them hostages. So yeah, it's very interesting that this commenter makes this comment, slavery is in your DNA. It's hard for us to understand this, James, isn't it? Looking from the outside.
Absolutely. And, we can see, you look back at the hierarchy and the monarchy and different things, but I don't think that it even compares to the caste system in history the way we would interpret it. So I think, it's really something hard for us to wrap our heads around.
I mean, we do have a class system, and particularly in the UK, and we always talk about our class system. We have the upper class, the middle class, and the working class in simple terms. But it's a very simplistic system. It does still exist to some degree. People are still judged by what class they fall into. It's almost human nature. There is some element of hierarchy, as there is in any human society. But the caste system is something that is so entrenched that it goes beyond that. It is a class system on steroids, and it is deeply, deeply evil, particularly for those in the bottom layer, the untouchables. And our final comment we'll leave to Modi Drink Moot, who has said, and this refers back to the original comment where Govt said that, have you seen even one Gurdwara run well? Well, he responds, said, I've seen many Gurdwaras run well. Just look at the Punjab. Of course they are. You only see problems outside. If we rule the Punjab before in major big territory, in other words, the Sikh Empire, we managed to look after and manage and govern a huge empire that was the Sikh Empire, then this small Punjab will be a walk in the park. How easy will it be to run the Punjab, given the chance? If someone like Modi is running India, then no issues will come from us. Rest assured, Delhi will be made a capital one day by the people's votes. So yeah, basically the comment wraps up the whole debate to saying, look, we've had an empire before. It was a huge success. It was universally acknowledged as a successful empire. It was fair. It was just. It wasn't just an empire for Sikhs. It was an empire for all religions. And in fact, even I think I reported on one story where many Muslims escaped from, I forget where it was, Iran somewhere, specific, I forget the specific region, but they were hugely oppressed and they fled to the Sikh Empire. Oh, Jews, I beg your pardon, it was Jews. It was Jews. And there was a huge pogrom against them further north, many hundreds of miles further north. And they found sanctuary in the Sikh Empire. And they were welcomed in, and they were given sanctuary, and they were given a home, because they knew at that time that all religions, people of all faiths, were welcome into the Sikh Empire, where they were treated fairly and they were treated equally. And that, in essence, is the whole concept and the premise of Khalistan. It will reflect the original Sikh Empire, which is built on the foundations of Sikhi. So, James, yeah, I think that's a very big comment there. We've had an empire before, we can do it again.
Well, and I think it's great from all of the different comments we're getting, and then the debates back and forth. I mean, thank you to everybody that's taking part in these conversations, because again, we learn by speaking with each other and looking at the different viewpoints. So it's very interesting to see how it works. But when you look at in terms of the Gurdwaras and how they run, I mean, you look at any religious facility, whether it's a church, a Gurdwara, temple, it doesn't matter. There's going to be issues over years and years. But look back, I mean, just what we're talking about here in Canada, going back to the early 1900s. And I mean, they wouldn't be here if they didn't run well overall.
Indeed, and thank you to all our commenters. There's been we've had so many great debates going on in the comment sections. It's a shame that we don't have time to cover them all, because some of them have been very interesting, very educational, and of course very entertaining. And we have laughed out loud at some of the comments. And this simple one debate is just one of many. And well done to those who do have a differing. Who have a differing opinion, who have the courage to stand up and make your statements, because of course it is a free world. You are free to make these comments, and thank you to those who've responded to those comments in a polite and a fair and educated manner. So do keep those comments coming in, but unfortunately there we are in time, James. For once we've made it in time, so well done to us. But of course, you have been watching Perspectives, and we must draw things to a close. But don't forget to keep those comments coming in. As you know, we do love to read them. We do love to talk about them at great length. And of course, don't forget, you can message us directly at message@satellitetv.com on any news items that you'd like us to cover, and indeed anything that you'd like to bring to our attention. But that has been Perspectives. In the meantime, thank you so much for watching. It is goodbye from me, and it's goodbye from James over in Canada.
Thanks again, everyone, for all the welcoming smiles at the Calgary referendum today. And I'll look forward to seeing you back in the studio tomorrow night.
Indeed, you have been watching Perspectives. We will see you next time.